Hello, everyone. Mali Panpadip here, CEO of the SOAR Community Network and co-founder of the SOAR Community Nebula. Our goal this year is to highlight and feature 1,000 champions of change, community builders, and what we lovingly call Nebula change agents. And today I'm so delighted to bring to you Lynn Borton. Thank you so much, Lynn, for being with us and a part of this initiative.
Oh, I'm really delighted to have been invited. Thank you.
You're so welcome. So please reintroduce yourself to our community and let us know what you're currently working on in the world that's exciting and hopeful and impactful.
Those are actually the words I like to use about what I do. I actually produce and host a radio show called Choose to Be Curious. It features a little bit of research and theory. It turns out there's a lot of work that's being done on curiosity as a scientific enterprise. But what I'm really interested in is how that rubber meets the road. And so my show is conversations with people about how curiosity shows up in work and life. And it's my one-woman effort to get people to choose to be just a little more curious, moment to moment, day to day, in all of our interactions.
So Lynn, why is curiosity, in your opinion, so important?
Well, first of all, it's something it's how we learn as a species. So we're hardwired for curiosity, and yet over time, I think we walk away from it for a variety of reasons. But what I think is important about it is it's a decision, and it's no mistake that my show is called Choose to Be Curious, because I want people to make the choice, like eating right or exercise, that we choose to be curious, how we choose to show up in our lives. So when we're faced with the unfamiliar or the uncomfortable or the new, that rather than being defensive or alarmed or resistant, we choose to be curious. We go towards it with an open mind and a willingness to maybe be changed by this new information, but anyway, to be influenced and receptive to the fact that that information is there. And I think a lot of the world's ills could be solved by people being just a little more curious. So I want to help people see that we are curious, we know how to use this skill, and we can choose to bring it forward, and we should.
That's great. Well, the theme of our interview series is all about change agents, everyday people who are creating the ripple effects in their community and in other people's lives. So when you think about the people in your life or the people who have been in your life, who've helped you, who have supported you, shown you love and empathy and mentored you, are there a few people that come to mind, or maybe experiences that you'd like to highlight?
I've been thinking about this, and it's so hard to choose. I think I'm lucky in that respect. But part of the reason it's hard to choose is that I believe that everybody is a mentor, and I can learn from all sorts of people. So, when I think about that, and I think about the people who have really influenced me, those are people who have visions that are larger than themselves. So it's not just about what can they do, where can they go, but where do they go as part of a larger movement, and who do they bring with them? So they're inclusive people, they're welcoming people, they're self-aware, and they're very generous. You can replace anything, stuff, money. The one thing you can't replace is time. And people who are generous with their time are, to me, some of the really most important people to surround yourself with, because those are the people who will come when you need it. They'll come when the world needs them. And that's everything from when I was young and first starting out in the working world. It was long before there was internet, so it was cold letters, actual mail that we put out. And I sent a cold resume to an organization whose mission I admired. And the director of government affairs called me up, and he said, "Well, we don't have any jobs, but you look like an interesting person. Why don't you come in and we'll talk?" And so I did, and it was a wonderful discussion. And at the end of it, we both agreed there had to be a way for me to get connected there. And And so I did. And ultimately, I ended up having a long career with that organization. But at the age of 24, I sort of made myself a promise that I would always give the information interview, because it was this opportunity to kind of enlarge the circle, to give a little of my time that might be really important to somebody else. And that was a very wise decision for a 24-year-old to make. So that was one place where, you know, those changes, those kindness, that kind of leadership from someone else really makes a difference, and a lasting practice for me that's had impact for others as well.
Right. You shared some of the characteristics already in answering that question. And as you think of the community builders and champions of change in your life today, are there characteristics and attributes that you truly admire and you feel are consistent among these souls that are really committed to creating impact for others?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it is this a sense of something larger than oneself. If you think you're the solution to everything, you're not somebody I admire, for starters, and I think you're wrong. So I think that sense of being something that's bigger, and a willingness and a creativity in sort of figuring out, how do I leverage the assets that I have, whatever they are. And we often underestimate the assets that we have. And I think the people that I admire are the ones who see opportunity where other people see obstacles, who see things as strengths where other people see weakness, and look for those things to then amplify them, strengthen them, encourage people to kind of bring them forward themselves. It's a little like recognizing that life is a scavenger hunt, and there are all sorts of goodies out there, and our job is to find them.
Sounds really fun.
It is fun when you think of it that way, you know. It's much better than thinking of it as like, oh my gosh, there are all these terrible things I have to figure out.
I know. And sometimes the world and media and all the things that we hear about and see out there is not, you know, it's daunting. It's heavy on us. So it's really important to kind of have that perspective, that reset button, and then surround ourselves with just positive people and reading things and choosing to be curious about things that are positive too.
Right.
You know, so because there's a lot of good stuff going on out there too as well.
And it really matters who you surround yourself with. I mean, there's a lot of research around this too, but just sort of anecdotally and personally, it matters. You know, you pick up the energy of the people around you. If you choose to surround yourself with a lot of negative energy, guess how you feel? If you choose to surround yourself with people with a lot of positive, kind of proactive energy, you know, suddenly you feel like things are possible. And that's a really important thing to be able to go back to and draw on when things really do get tough. And you think, I don't know how to deal with this. You think, maybe I don't, but I know people who do.
That's great. Well, diving deeper into your series, your podcast, or perhaps highlighting other organizations or missions that you are helping to advance, how do you spend your time, your energy, your resources, and your gifts? What are some of the causes or movements that you really, really are helping to advance, to move along, and support heavily?
So this is an interesting question, because I'm something of a serial monogamist when it comes to causes, and I've been very wed to a lot of different causes over time, and I've been trying to think sort of what's the common thread. And I appreciate that you put that question forward, because in having the question given to me and sort of choosing to be curious about my own habits, I realized the common thread for me is I'm interested in organizations that help people find their voice and find a way to bring that forward. So right now, my greatest energy is going to sort of having just said I'm a monogamous, I actually have two organizations that I'm spending a lot of time with, but one of them is Arlington Independent Media, which is the host organization for the independent radio station that carries my show. And it lives both as a radio show and as a podcast. And Arlington Independent Media is specifically here to help people become better, both consumers and producers of media, so that we can create high quality products to say the things that we think need to be said that may not be available elsewhere in the kind of more commercialized media universe. And then also how to be better consumers of it. Like, what am I listening to? How do I be kind of more critical in my thinking? How do I understand what is genuinely fake news? So media literacy is all a part of what Arlington Independent Media does. And it brings people from all walks of life. I mean, one of the things I love about it is there are people across the age spectrum and from every imaginable life experience who come through the door wanting to tell their story. And it's pretty cool to be in a creative community like that. I haven't been in one that's quite like that. And then the second kind of movement that I've been heavily involved in the last couple of years is actually something created by my son, who was a teacher, and he was a math teacher because that's what the schools needed, but his real passion is in civics and civic engagement. And he created an after-school program called How to Change the World.
Wow.
And so these students come after school, they actually get credit for it. He petitioned the school board to give credit for this after-school program. And they learn some of the basics of civics, which they no longer learn in school because that's been eliminated from their public school curriculum. And then they learn how to become engaged first at the local level, then at the state level, and then nationally. And for the national part, those students who live in the poorest square mile of Rhode Island come to DC to see how change happens at a federal level. And we leverage our network of friends and colleagues and friends of friends and colleagues of colleagues to get those kids into the Supreme Court, the State Department for simulation exercises, Uber, Phone to Action, organizations that are making change happen in a lot of different ways, government, for-profit, nonprofit, so that they can see and develop a plan for themselves about what's the change they want to make happen and how might they get there, and what's a network of assets, people, and connections that they might use to do that. And that's been an amazing experience.
Wow. What's the name of the organization?
It's called How to Change the World.
How to Change the World. That's right. Wow. That's the official name. I love it.
Yep, that's the official name.
Wow. Well, I need to interview your son. That's a
You do, actually.
beautiful seed that's planted out there. Wow. Okay. So now let's talk about some of the tough times in life and the challenges that we all go through. None of us get out of this thing called life without some of these ups and downs.
Yeah.
So are there philosophies, mottos, mantras, or perhaps a specific quote that you can share to help our community also utilize this when things are tough for us as well?
Yeah. I really love quotes, so it's really hard to choose one. But I'll tell you one that I keep going back to because I think it's instructive under any circumstances. Actually comes from Henry James in The Art of Fiction. So it was about writing, but I think it's about life. And that is, try to be one of those on whom nothing is lost. Mm-hmm. And so stuff happens to you, good, bad, indifferent. Try to learn from it. And you take the lessons from it. You stay open to whatever is around you. You see things again as an opportunity as opposed to an obstacle. And I think I have found that thinking that way helps a lot. I mean, part of my backstory on the radio show is that I'm a 5-year survivor of cancer. And 5 years ago, I had this scare. I was very fortunate. I had good health care. Was all treated. I went back to work and I thought, great, I dodged a bullet. And then I kind of stopped and I said, I feel like I owe my good fortune something more than the same old, same old. And this has been great. I'd had a great run in nonprofit management, high position in a national organization. This is good, but I put up a lot of things until later. What if later is now? And life is short, so I'm going to take a hard left and do something different. And I did not have a plan other than to get a plan. That plan ended up being radio, which if you'd asked me to make a list of 100 things that I thought I would do, radio would not have been on that list. And that's what I mean about being somebody on whom nothing is lost, that ideas, sparks, opportunities come along and you go, huh, that's interesting. Maybe that's something that's worth learning a little bit more about. So that's been a pretty good life philosophy.
That's beautiful. It's the first time that I've heard that once on this.
Oh, good. It's a keeper.
It definitely is. Wow. Well, Lynn, when you think about a better world, imagining it or reimagining it, what does it look like through your eyes?
This is going to sound a little self-serving, but I would love to live in a world where the worst thing that we could say of someone is that they're incurious. Now, that would require that a whole lot of things that are currently true would be eliminated first, because there are worse things than being incurious. But I think if we got to a point where we really viewed being incurious as a demonstrably bad thing, that our cultural values were that that's really not an okay way to show up in the world, we would live in a much enriched, much less violent, much more constructive and creatively engaged world, and in a place that looked at problems and thought there is a solution here. It may not be the solution that we want or that we think is the right one now, but to me, a better world is a world where people are kind of constantly going towards the problem instead of solidifying their position against it. And I think you do that with curiosity. It sounds self-serving given what I do, but I have come to believe, and I'm not sure that I would have said that when I started the show, but nearly 100 conversations in now with people from all walks of life, I really think that I'm onto something there, and that's an important part of what can and will make for a better world.
Well, in my humble opinion, I don't think it's self-serving at all. I believe that you're simply in alignment. And I think that that's because it's everything you do is around, curiosity and inspiring others and questioning and challenging others to be curious as well. So it makes sense that would be your answer.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. But I'm sitting on all my questions for you about your journey and this process and the world that you see with this network of conversations, because I think we're building towards the same thing, each in our own way.
I just think it comes back down to a couple of things for us. Is one, we want to spread more good news, and we want people to know that there are so many souls out there, millions and millions of us, who are every day creating some positive impact. And we don't get the spotlight, we don't get the features. We are overwhelmed with all the negative stories, or even some of the positive ones where we're waiting for celebrities and people who have big names to inspire us, when I believe that the people who are inspiring us are the people that don't really get a platform, right? The people in our backyard. So that's one. And honestly, Lynn, we love doing this because we really believe that everyone wants to be heard, seen, and valued. And if we can provide them with a safe space to feel heard, seen, and valued, then their messages, their stories, the platform that we're offering is going to invite others to step in and step up and say, you know what, I have gifts and talents that are valuable, and I would like to share them with the world. So that's really our hope.
Yeah. Well, good on you, because I think that's exactly right. I mean, I think that's hope lies in hope. And hope begets hope, conversation begets conversation, connection begets connection. And I think that's our path forward as a species.
I believe so as well. Well, Lynn, thank you so much for your time today. How can our community support you right now?
Well, I would love to have more people listening to the show and joining in the conversation. So you can find me at choosetobecurious.com. I'm also on social media, Facebook at Choose to Be Curious, on Twitter at choose2 curious, because Choose to Be Curious all spelled out was too long for Twitter, and Instagram at Choose to Be Curious. So it's really fun for me to connect with people literally all over the world who are kind of interested in this idea and bring their own experience of, here's how I kind of rediscovered my curiosity. So join the curiosity conversation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time today, and I appreciate all of the work that you're doing.
Likewise.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Please remember to nominate yourself or someone in your community who is making a wonderful, wonderful impression on you, great impact on the community. Please visit us at nebula.soarcommunitynetwork.com. Thanks, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon.